I just love a good mystery. This summer, Privateer Press went and did mystery boxes. Now they do this every couple of years, so I went and got myself 2 of them this year so that I could have a fun surprise and get myself some more miniatures to paint. So this video will actually have 2 chapters. The first one is going to be me opening the box to figure out what I got, and the next, because I'm a painting channel, will be of course to paint one. To start, I'm going to give you my hopes for what factions might be in the boxes. This is where I get a tiny bit technical with Warmachine and Hordes, so if you don't know much about them, skip ahead a bit. First I want to tell you what 2 factions I really don't want. That's Khador and Trollbloods. Even over the years, just neither of those factions have ever interested me. I'm going to include Grimkin here as well. While I don't dislike them as much as I do those other 2, I'm not really that interested either. I got myself one of these boxes a few years ago too, and I got all of this stuff in it. This model alone is worth twice what the box was worth, so it is a good deal. It's just unfortunate that I got it for a faction I didn't care about. As for what would fit in with what I already own, I happen to already have Large Cygnar, Retribution of Syra, and Legion of Everblight armies, so anything from those would have a place. Though I hope for a few units in particular, like Hex Hunters. I also have some Circle Ouroboros, so those, especially Wolves, I'd be excited for. Any of the factions after that, I'd be just fine seeing, especially if they have something I kinda want to paint like Nihilators from Scorn. Well, now that you know what I want, let's see what I got. So the only thing I don't know at this moment is whether or not there's 2 boxes in here, because I ordered 2. So this might just be opening a box to find out that there's 2 more boxes. We'll see as soon as I get it open. So it looks like it's all loose. I'll get rid of that. So it looks like I've got a set of pins. So that's what those look like. Who is that ward? So it looks like Undead Cain and an Undead Gobber. I don't know who these other 2. Well, that's just the skull. Oh, I actually got a brush this time. Last time I didn't get any painting supplies, so I didn't think there would be any painting supplies in it. This is nice. It's a nice flathead, which is actually good because my other flatheads are kind of dying at the moment. So something like that will actually be pretty good for me. First model looks like a pig barrel rider. So I'm not quite sure what this is, but I think it's an exclusive. Like you can't get in stores or was for an event or something. It looks like a big old keg with a little guy on top. See. Oh, so I know what this is. This is a stuffed agonizer, and agonizers are, well, they're just terrible. They've got like flesh hooks and whatnot in them. They're kind of like baby dinosaurs, or not baby dinosaurs, like baby elephant dinosaurs. I guess that makes even less sense. But essentially, it's a little stuffed version of that they decided to make cute, even though it's a terrible thing. Alright, looks like I've got some Khador templates. So I might have got Khador or Khador. I get those 2. When I started playing, I always called them Khador, but later I found out when they did their official videos, it's Khador, and I still want to say Khador. I'm sorry, but it's technically Khador, but it looks like that might be what I have again. Maybe I'll get to finish a Khador army, who knows. I do have more Khador tokens. And this one... Trollbloods. Oh no, I think my worst fears just came true. Oh my goodness, no. So yeah, here it is. Trollbloods, Pyre Troll. So it's just one of their light war beasts, as well as Northkin Fire Eaters. I assume this is like a solo unit or something like that. I mean, those don't look too bad. Earthborn Dire Troll, so this looks like one of their heavy war beasts. I think Earth-based one. Yeah, Earthborn. Obviously it would be an Earth-based one. Oh, and then there's a big one. Well, this is actually nice because they didn't do this last time, but this is the Battle Force. So this is actually a starter set. So the last box I got, I didn't get a Warlock or anything to start a Khador army. So in this case, even though it's Trollbloods, I at least got something to start it with, where it's got your warlock, but then also some beasts to start off with. Oh, it's weird. So it's not properly, like, they don't have a proper box for it. It just says Trollkin Champions. So let's see what that looks like here. Yeah, so it looks like it might have been just something that wasn't properly boxed, or something from the factory that didn't get put in the right box, or a template one. So I guess that's kind of their way of getting it going, or getting rid of it. So that's more Trollkin. So it looks like that's all the Trollkin stuff. Oh no, this is just my luck. And I thought something like this might happen, and it's really funny that it did. Because remember that model I showed you, the big one? It looks like I just got another one. So yeah, here, I'm actually gonna go get it and find it. Exact same. So now I have two of these massive things to try and do something with. I guess it's good that there's two variants in them, so you can make it a conquest or a victor. So you can see, it can either be this one here with the double cannon, or this one here with the single cannon. So I've got two big ones now. I can make a pretty good starting army with that, but that does mean that the other two I got were the exact same as well. So the Man of War Shock Troopers, which is the one I got last year as well, so now I have 2 units of these, and the Mad Dog Berserker Rager. Now this one's actually kind of nice because it is, I mean, you're always going to need more than one anyway, so that's all right. But I still don't have a Khador Warcaster, so I would still need something to use them with. But this one is actually kind of like the nice, proper plastic sets, which I think they only have a few like this. That's something I've never built before from Privateer Press, is one of their proper plastic kits. That is everything. So the two I didn't want were the two I got. But at least with the Trollbloods, they gave me the battle group, because then I can at least get something started with them. Khador, I'm still missing a Warcaster. I've never had them before, I've never had any, so I have no way to play with them. So I think when it comes to what I'm going to paint, the one that was the most interesting looking to me would probably be either the Pyre Troll or the Earthborn Dire Troll. He has nice spell effects and fire and lots of muscular tissue that would be interesting to paint. Whereas the Earthborn Dire Troll, I think he just has a good style to him. Lots of action, lots of pose, and he wouldn't be too hard to paint. It would be kind of stone and just skin, and I could do that in interesting ways. So I think for this video, this is the one I'm gonna paint. To get this guy started, I have to scrape down some mold lines. Ever since I got my 3D printer, I rarely do this, but I guess it's kind of the same as removing supports in a way. Once I find a good place to start, usually along a flat part somewhere, I just flatten the area more with the tip of the knife, and follow the long all the way around a part until it's mostly gone. I tend to get a bit lazy with this part and don't really try for the deepest recesses, but just enough so there's nothing obvious at first glance. When it comes to knife safety, I'm pretty sure on camera it looks like I'm about to cut myself 1,000 times. But kind of like paring knives, it's about how you hold it that makes it safe. I hold it up around the neck of the knife while placing one finger on the blade behind it. Not too far that it'd touch the sharp edge, but right behind it. What this does is limit my motions when only moving the knife with my fingers. I have such a small range of motion that even if the blade slipped after a difficult cut, it wouldn't move far. So as long as I'm only using my fingers and not my wrist to make the cuts, I should never be in danger of cutting myself. Now that I've got them all clean and half put together, I see all these very wide gaps all over the place. A giant line separating his chest and belly isn't good. I got some gloves on so I can show how I've recently begun to fill gaps. The one side effect of doing 3D printing is that I'm swimming in resin. So I filled up a new, unused syringe I got from a pharmacy with some. That gives me a really nice point to then fill those gaps with the resin and use this LED flashlight to harden it. Because of the resin's loose viscosity, it wants to pool in those gaps, so sometimes it takes a few applications to get it to the depth I want, but otherwise is very easy to apply. I'd also like to make sure that this is very abundantly clear. Since this is resin and needles, this should not be attempted by children. And even if you're an adult, if possible, get yourself one of these kinds of needles instead of what I'm using from your dentist if they have extras. They don't have a sharp tip, so can't poke through your gloves if there's an accident, and are actually a little easier to control. If you have a bottle with a very fine tip, that would also be good. But more important than anything is that you keep yourself safe. There are other, safer ways to fill gaps. This is only an example of how I like to. When it comes to this, I like to use clear resins so that the light can penetrate it and harden it a bit deeper within those gaps. But that means it's also a bit hard to see how far it's come out. So using my knife again, I poke around the resin to make sure it's all the right depth, but also clean off some of it if it's come out too much, adding more if I think there's still going to be a noticeable gap. The other nice thing about this method of gap filling is that because you control when it hardens, if you go overboard or get it in places you don't mean to, you can either wipe it away with some paper towel, or if you really made a blunder, just wash it off like you would resin from any other print. And the last reason I like this method for gap filling, there's no waiting to get started. Now that I've got it filled and hardened, I can start putting my primer on immediately. I have a video where I go over my method for priming models with an airbrush if you need some help with that, and it's the exact same thing I'm doing here, only I've added some purple ink so I can see it going on. With the primer on there, the gaps have pretty much disappeared and blended into the rest of the model. This method won't work on every surface. Something like fur might be ruined by it, but this kind of smooth surface, it's perfect for. For his skin, I want to get really colorful. So I'm going to do some mood airbrushing, using browns and greens to break up parts of his body, starting with a brown for the lower extremities. For that, I mix red oxide, yellow oxide, and black to get my brown, but also add some purple to match the undercoat I've currently got. I think what I'll be doing is a brown and purple body with a green back and head, so this goes on anything that's below his waist, but not worrying if the spray doesn't catch some of the purple as well, letting that sit in the shadows. I also make sure to get the lower half of his jaw, as I want this color to creep up just a bit. For the green, I don't want a strong green, but an earthy green. So mix together a phthalo green with a yellow oxide and just enough of the red oxide to push it a little brown. Then add some black, just to darken it for the first layer. This goes all over his back and the top of his head, as well as along the shoulders and top of the arms. I thought this wasn't enough green, so decided to take it down the back as well, and a bit on his legs. With what I had left in the airbrush, I was just going to pick out some of the spots between the rocks, but I'm not too worried as this is just going to get washed in a bit. Now that I've got my outlines of color, I just want to layer them up and make them brighter. So to start with, I'll do the same mix of brown, but without the black this time, so it's just pure saturated pigments spraying from deliberate angles so that I'm not covering everything from my previous layer, and leaving it darker in those shadows. Since I'm going to want the green to go over top of the brown a bit, I'm going to finish with the brown first, layering up with my airbrush like I did for the last layer, this time just adding more yellow oxide to get a lighter tone. Though once it was in my airbrush, I didn't think it was actually that much brighter, so added a bit of white as well. This mix was used once again just to pick out all the points of detail, so the top of the pecs, the front of the knees and leg muscles, as well as the very wrinkly knuckles of the hands and feet. Since I will be giving this an overall wash, I need to go brighter still, more white. Then again, just finding the details I want to be brighter and get very accurate with the airbrush, getting it close and spraying lightly. This layer ended up not being as light as I wanted either, so a bit more white and another once over until I ended up with this. It'll be the same thing with the green, the same mix of green, yellow, and red, but without any of the black this time, spraying the face from above so that it leaves nice shadows along his facial texture, adding more yellow at first to lighten it, then more and more white until the green was at the same place as the brown in terms of lightness. Before I get all sloppy with some washes, I want to make sure my brightest points will stay their brightest, so adding some white to match what I had in the final mix of my airbrush for each of the colors, I use a fine detail brush to start picking out two places in particular. One is the knuckles of the feet and hands, as they're very wrinkly. They have so much texture in fact that I could probably have dry brushed this instead and it wouldn't have been much different, but I needed to get out the fine detail brush anyway for section number 2. Part of the sculpt of this model is the cracks in his skin. It's like broken stone. I want to make sure they show up and are picked out, so using the fine brush, I line the bottom ridge, or at least whichever would be the opposite of light source. I do this for both the brown and the green. Time to bring it all together with a controlled wash. I started with a purple base coat, because my plan was to give it a purple wash right from the start. So I'm starting with some medium, some dark purple, and some red oxide, mixing that into the medium. Just a little bit of each. Then adding some purple ink, because I'd like to give it some staining power, and just some water to help thin it. I'm not quite sure if I diluted this enough or not, so just put a bunch on the bottom of his foot for now, then check it out when it dries. It looks alright, but could end up being too strong if I'm not careful. And what I mean by that is that I'm going to be keeping this a controlled wash. So I get my brush wet with water and add some medium to it, then dip only the tip of my brush into the wash. This way, if I start in the deeper areas and spread the wash out, by the time I pull the brush towards the lighter parts like his belly and chest, there should be barely any pigment left. So unlike a basic wash where I let it pool in the recesses and stain the rest, I'm actually deciding where it's going to be darker. But in really thin places like the wrinkles and cracks in his skin, it'll still pool and make dark. You can see now once it's dry that I was a bit heavy-handed in some places still, like under his arm here. But that's hard to see anyway, so I'm not gonna worry. It did fill in the areas exactly like I wanted to for the most part though, like on the face here. It added shade to the eyes, but didn't actually cover too much of the colors underneath the layer of wash. Unfortunately, the video is getting quite long, so I think I'm gonna have to make this a two-parter. There's still lots to do, like the stones, his clothes, as well as really bringing out the rest of his face and teeth to match the earthy tones around it. So look for that in next week's video. But for now, I'm actually having quite a bit of fun on this guy for not really wanting him in the first place, which is a surprise. Probably the best surprise I got from the mystery box yet. Please subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this one, or just other fun things to do with painting miniatures. And until next time, enjoy your own painting journey.